Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, Miss Anne. Hopefully everybody had a nice evening. Good morning, Miss Charlotte. It's awfully early out there. Hi, Miss Kathy. Miss Betty, welcome. Good morning, Miss Pam. Yeah. It wasn't a super late night meet for me, but I did not want to get up and get moving this morning. But, that's not uncommon. It's been a long week. I don't know why, but it has. Stressful. Good morning, Miss Charlotte. Give everybody just a few more minutes to get in here. It's just now 8:30, and then we're going to get started with looking at the flying geese unit. We're going to get your gaggle in order. And hopefully Mom will make it back, because I have proceeded to misplace the entire pile of rulers that I brought, or collected over my years, and was bringing to work this morning to show and demonstrate for you squaring up flying geese. And somewhere between home and here, I have lost that entire pile of rulers. I have all my samples and things like that, but I honestly have no clue what I did with that stack of rulers. So, hopefully she found them. Swear, if my head was not connected to my body, I would have lost it long ago. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Well, we'll get started. And hopefully we will, yes.
Just looking, just seeing what's going on.
Right there. Hopefully Mom comes back soon with my rulers. She left her phone here, so I can't text her.
Where's she at?
So, good morning. I had her run home because I had a stack of rulers this morning when I was packing up my bag, and those rulers are not here.
You're just so
or
funny.
I've set them down someplace inside the store. I don't know.
Where's your list?
Yeah, it's wherever my list is at. It's craziness. All right, let's get started. And we're going to look at the flying geese unit. This unit is a pretty typical unit. Let me get my head out of the way here. Pretty common unit, what I would call a core quilt unit. We use this a lot in creating quilt blocks. It's pretty common. It consists of 3 triangles. Okay. You have, and typically it's 2 different fabrics. You have the larger center triangle that's there, which is what we would call a quarter square triangle, is generally called or referred to as the goose. So that is one fabric. And then you have the 2 smaller triangles that are on the outsides of it to turn it into a rectangle. And those are commonly referred to as the sky, or some people will refer to them as his wings. So one or the other, completely up to you, but that is the 3 shapes, well, really 2 shapes, 3 pieces that are part of our flying geese unit. Let me do one thing. Let's get my face off the screen here so that we can see everything. We can't do Oh, thank you, Miss Elisa. I'll let her know. Hopefully she makes it back here. You know, we can't do quilting without math, and I just like to teach you some math. So, in terms of sizing of a flying geese, a flying geese will finish, his width will be twice of his height. That is a proportional flying geese unit, basically. So if the flying geese unit it finishes at 4 inches, that means he's 2 inches tall. Okay? And so that's just kind of the general math that we have when we get to making flying geese. Now, I have 4 methods. No. All right, I have an entire pile of rulers that have disappeared.
I went kitchen.
Yes, give me 1 second.
I went the kitchen, foyer, bathroom, sofa downstairs, sewing room, your room, moved your blankets.
No,
Came back out.
I don't know.
Oh, went to long arm room.
Yeah,
I went back to the kitchen.
they have disappeared. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to show you rulers. I'm so mad right this second.
Stack of rulers.
But we'll still power through. I do apologize.
Excuse me, just 1 minute. Let me ask you a question. One thing I may not looked is that bench. Was your purse there this morning?
My work bag was on the bench in front of the windows.
So let me run back.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. All right. We're going to teach you 4 different ways to make flying geese units. So we're going to look at the traditional triangle method. We're going to learn about stitch and flip, a no waste, and a 2 square method. Okay? All of which have their own pluses and minuses to them. But we're going to look at all 4 options that are there for making flying geese triangles. So first up is the traditional triangle method. So with the traditional flying triangle method here. Oh, Maria, you're funny. No, it's okay. I have pictures of the rulers. I was just going to demonstrate, but it's okay. I have graphics. I appreciate it.
Dad's going back home to check the Wi-Fi.
We're going to run back to the house and look at one spot that Mom didn't check. I swear. So, anyway, we're not going to stress over it anymore. Because you can make flying geese without needing a ruler. That's the one thing. Okay? So, you have a traditional triangle method. So, it means we're literally going to cut 3 triangles and sew them together. The one downside to this particular type of triangle flying geese method is that there are bias edges that you are working with, so you need to make sure that you pay attention and you work carefully. This is the math. Now, most of the time, if you're following a pattern or things along that lines, it's going to give you the math, and you don't have to do that. But if you were going to draft your own pattern and things like that, the biggest thing is you need to know what you want the flying geese to finish at. Okay? So, for the goose portion of a traditional triangle method, you cut a square, and then that square is going to get cut on both diagonals, so it's actually going to give you 4 geese units, okay, out of one square. So you take the finished width of your block, so in the example here I say a 4-inch finished, and then you add 1 1/4 inch, okay? So that's 5 1/4. So we're going to cut a 5 1/4 inch square, and we're going to cut that in half on both diagonals. If you opt to do this, and I know bias is the devil, we don't like to work with it, it can cause a lot of issues, I highly suggest starching, Best Press, Material Magic combination, Niagara. If you give it a little starch, that's going to kind of help to resist it. And it's more along the lines of the bias will give you more if you have to seam rip. If you're seam ripping, those bias edges is really where we run into the biggest amount of problem. So once we cut that 5¼ inch square in half both directions, so through both diagonals, we're going to have 4 goose bodies. Now we need to cut the sky or his wings. So we're going to cut a square with the measurements that are the same height as the geese or as the goose, and we're going to add 7/8. So we want it to be 2 inches finished, so we're going to cut 2 7/8 inch squares. Okay, 1 square cut on the one diagonal will give you enough sky for 1 flying geese or goose, sorry. So you take that 2 7/8 inch square, cut it in half diagonally from corner to corner, and that's going to give you the 3 pieces you need to make that flying geese unit. Okay. Traditionally, this unit or this method is what we use for hand piecing. If you are using templates and particular certain rulers, which we'll talk about, and if you use an AccuQuilt or any other die cutting machines, we are using the traditional triangle method for that purpose. Okay, so let me just kind of demonstrate here for you. So you have your square. Our example here is a 3 by 6 inch finished. Okay, so my width was 6. I'm going to add 1 1/4 inch. Okay, and that's going to give me a 7¼ inch square that I'm going to cut. I'm then going to proceed to cut that diagonally in both directions. To give me 4 goose bodies. Okay, this edge is now bias. Okay, we want to be very careful with that edge. We would take, I have a 3 inch finished height flying geese unit. So this square is 3 7/8 that I am going to cut in half diagonally once to give me the necessary sky pieces for this unit. Now, what becomes challenging with this unit, not really challenging, that's a bad word for it, but you can't, if you match one edge is going to be bigger this way, and if you match this way, then you're going to be short. So, and sometimes it can be challenging to know when you're really centered. So if I am using traditionally cut triangles, I will carefully find the middle of my edges, and then I'll match middles. And then sew 1/4 inch. And that will evenly center that unit on both sides. Okay. Now, if you're using the AccuQuilt for this method, and you have cubes, so in your cube, die number 4 is your goose body, and die number 5 is not only, they call it the half square triangle, but it's the coordinating unit to create the sky for the goose. So this actually cuts 4 at a time. You can see it's going to cut diagonally through corner to corner. And what the AccuQuilt does is it gives you what we call the engineered corners, so the dog ears are cut off. And so when you have those dog ears cut off, so for example, versus them coming to a point, you have the dog ears cut off, you have the ability to know exactly where you are matching to. Okay, so I'm able to match that unit there and know that this is in the proper location. So your 1/4 inch, I like to press my flying geese, I like to press those seams open, just because that's going to help eliminate or reduce some of the bulk here at the tip of your unit, but it's completely your choice. Usually we press, if you're going to press them, we press away. And then you would come back and add the other side of the sky to your unit and then press there as well. Okay? So that is your traditional flying geese triangle method. Okay? The next method is what we call stitch and flip. And it's probably the one that most of you are most familiar with. The stitch and flip is where we use basically one rectangle and two squares to draw a line from corner to corner, and then we stitch on that line and fold back and things along that lines. So that is the stitch and flip method, and I'll show you that as well. But we have to figure out the math because it's always good to know how we came to that measurement. You're going to cut a rectangle, okay, with the measurement the same as the height and width of your finished unit. Okay, so if you know that you want your flying geese to be 2 by 4, you know that you need to cut a rectangle that's 2.5 by 4.5. Okay, you have to add in those seam allowances. For the sky portion, those are the two squares that you need to sew to the sides. We're going to cut them the same as the height of our finished block plus 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm going to cut 2.5 inch squares, and I need 2 of them in order to be able to make one flying geese unit. Now, this can also be referred to as the folded corner method. Okay. Typically, you'll use this method when you need to make more scrappy flying geese. You don't need 4 of something. Okay. So you can also use this method. We use it a lot more for directional fabrics, where we need to make sure that things are oriented in the direction that we know, stripes, things like that, because we can control the direction of the pattern based on the way that we cut the rectangle. And versus if we were cutting the unit diagonally across 2 corners, you're going to have some that are right side up, some that are sideways, upside down. So the stitch and flip method allows you a little more control over directionality. And it's also a method that uses a little bit less fabric, so that if you're working with scraps and things along that lines, this is going to be a good method for that style. Okay, so again, I'm going to work with a 3 by 6 inch finished. So I have a rectangle. Here, let me do this. I have a rectangle that is 3.5 by 6.5. Okay, 3.5 by 6.5. I'm going to cut 2 squares that are 3.5 inch squares, and I am going to draw one diagonal line from corner to corner. Okay, on the back side of every piece of sky square. Okay, you're going to take that square, you're going to lay it right sides together with your goose body. And we want the diagonal line to go from the center of your rectangle to the lower outside corner. Okay? We are going to stitch on that line. Now, I actually prefer, if you can see, to stitch just to the outside of that line, farther out into this corner, because if you sew towards the inside of that line, you're going to make this unit too small. So I actually prefer, and especially if you draw with maybe a thicker tipped pen, a marker, or chalk, you definitely want to stitch a little, just a thread to the outside of that line. It's just going to help you be able to, when you trim this and fold back, we want this unit to fold back and be even with the top edge and the side of the rectangle. Okay, so once you sew on that line, you can take your rotary cutter and your ruler and you're going to trim 1/4 of an inch from your stitching. Okay. And then you can press. Get my annies. Okay. Okay. So you'll press it away, or you can press it open. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to repeat on the other side. Again, the diagonal line is going to go from the center of my rectangle to the lower outside corner. Okay? So that this will then flip up and back and give you your flying geese unit. Okay? That's the stitch and flip method. Okay. Again, probably the most common that you know of. The no waste method. This is a fun method. The no waste method is kind of a combination of the math that is involved in a traditional triangle method, but we make 4 flying geese at a time. Okay? You don't have to work, all the bias stays intact here, so you're not working with open bias seams and things along that lines. So again, it's the same math that we tackled in the traditional method. So you take the finished width of your unit and you add 1 1/4 inches, and that's going to give you the square that you're going to cut for your goose fabric. And then you're going to take the height of your finished unit and add 7/8, and you're going to cut 4 squares that size. Okay? This method is used when you want to make a lot of flying geese out of the same fabrics. Okay? Produces 4 at a time. If you're using directional fabric, okay, but you want half of the flying geese oriented one way and the other half oriented the other, this is the way to go, okay? And obviously the most common is to use it. They're not there?
No.
Oh my God, they really have disappeared. Someone has stolen my rulers. I swear. I'm gonna go crazy. And when you want no waste, okay, you really can produce a lot of flying geese fast with this method, okay? So I have, again, 3 by 6. So 6 inches was the finished width of my unit. And I'm going to add 1 1/4 inches. I'm going to cut a 6 1/4 inch square of my goose body. For my sky fabric, 3 7/8. We are going to lay the goose fabric right side up, and we're going to lay 2 squares of our sky fabric right side down in 2 opposite corners. Okay? And I'm going to draw a line diagonally from corner to corner. Okay? We are going to sew 1/4 inch from each side of that line. Now, 1/4 inch. If you do not have a 1/4 inch presser foot, you're going to want to draw that 1/4 inch. Okay? So if you do have a 1/4 inch presser foot, you can follow the line on the edge of the drawn line and stitch. Now for my Bernina owners, if you are functioning with a 97 foot, this side of the foot is not 1/4 inch from the needle. Okay? You can see that this edge is wider than this edge. Okay? So if you're going to use your 97 foot, we need to make sure it's the 1/4 inch edge of the foot that is following the line, not the wider edge of the foot. Okay? So just a note that the 97 and the 97D are not the same width left and right like you will find on your 37s and your 57s, okay? So if you're using a 37 or a 57, you could use either side of the foot, but on a 97, you only have one side that's true 1/4 of an inch from the needle, okay? Now, once you have those lines stitched 1/4 of an inch down both sides, we're going to cut right up the middle, okay? And we will press that unit. I'm going to find those rulers, and they're going to be like sitting right there and could have bit me. So you're going to have what looks like a heart. Okay. We're going to take another sky fabric. We're going to place it right sides together into the corner. And we're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. Now, the tool that you use to draw with, it doesn't have to be, you know, water soluble or anything. It's on the wrong side of the fabric. So as long as you can see it, you're good to go. We're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch from each side of that line. I'm just going to pin it right this second because I'm not going to sew. And then you will trim on the line, and you will have 2 flying geese units out of that, and you will get 2 flying geese units out of this one. Okay, so that's how you'll end up with 4 units, okay, in the no waste method. Okay, all right. The no waste method is a method that a lot of flying geese rulers use when you want to make your flying geese. Now, the last method that I'm going to talk about is the two square method. You're going to take 2 squares. One of them is going to be larger than the other, and in a couple of stitches, you'll have 4 flying geese. Okay. Basically, the way that we figure out the math is, one, you got to start out with your unfinished unit size. You will add one measurement to the goose fabric and another measurement to the sky fabric. So if I'm doing a 3.5 by 6.5 inch unfinished flying goose unit, I am going to add 1 inch to the longest measurement, okay, for my goose fabric, and I'm going to add 1 inch to the longest measurement in my sky fabric. So 6.5 is the longest measurement we have in our unfinished unit. So my goose fabric, I'm going to cut a 7.5 inch square, and my sky fabric, I am going to cut a 9 inch square. Okay. We are going to lay these squares right sides together. Okay. And we're going to draw a line down the middle. Now, when you lay these squares right sides together, okay, you want to center this unit, okay, so that you can make sure that you've got about the same amount of fabric all the way around. It's about 3/4 of an inch is what it should be, the difference between the two of them, okay, roughly. Draw a line from corner to corner, and then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch from that line on both directions, okay? So you can see there's my 2 lines, basically 1/4 inch from the corner. We are then going to use a rotary cutter, and we're going to cut right down the middle. Okay. It's going to give you 2 pieces that look like this. Okay. I'm going to take one to the iron here real fast. We're going to press the seam towards the sky fabric. All right, there's one. So I've pressed my seam towards the white. So we have two units that look like this. One is bigger than the other, okay? We're now gonna take these and we're gonna put them right sides together with opposite sides matching, okay? So I'm gonna stack them on top of each other, okay? And I'm not matching the center seam, okay? And oh, thank you, Miss Jane, for my math issue. Still okay, though. Bigger is better. Okay. So I'm going to match two edges. Okay. Don't worry about if all four edges don't match each other. Okay. We don't want to match the middle seam. We want them to be offset. And I'm going to make sure that at least two edges align exactly. We're going to take a ruler. Again, we're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner, crossing over, okay, the line or the seam that we already sewed. Okay, so we're going to go this direction. We're going to sew 1/4 inch on each side of that line, just like we did before. And then we're going to cut that in half on the line. So we'll end up with two units that look like this, and then we open it up, it'll look like that. Okay? Before we open this up, we're going to take a pair of scissors and we're just going to clip right in the seam allowance, right past where the seam overlaps. And by doing that, that allows you to press one seam of one flying geese one way and one seam the other, okay, versus them all going. And then that way, in your flying geese unit, the seams are all going away from center, okay? So once you have your unit, let me get a ruler that's wider than 3. We can, basically, we're gonna come cut down the middle of this. And for me, this is where I would break out my ruler and trim using, whether you're gonna use the Quilt in the Day, the wing clipper, anything along that lines you could do, or you can, without a ruler, cut right up the middle. And then we can square this unit up to 3.5 by 6.5. And so I can go 1/4 inch above that line. Okay. And we want our 3.5. Do my top and bottom first. One, 2, 3.5. And then we'll do 6.5. And if you have a square ruler, it's much easier. But 3.25 is the halfway point. So I'm going to put 3.25 here at my point. I'm going to trim this side. Trim that side. And you've got your flying geese or flying goose. But I usually, with that method, will use a ruler, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. Okay. And in the presentation PDF that you can download, yeah, there is a lot of bias in that method, but it's not too terrible. But yes, the step-by-step instructions are in that presentation. Okay. So if this is just too much math and you're not into figuring out things the right size, you can look at rulers, okay? And on all the rulers and everybody's rulers, they all give you what size you need to cut. They give you a chart. You go find your size and you cut the sizes they tell you. These are all the rulers that are in my missing stack of squares. Probably the first ruler I ever owned, one of the first Flying Geese rulers I ever owned, and I'm pretty sure they were probably the first ones that were out there many, many, many moons ago, are the Quilt and a Day Flying Geese rulers, okay? No measuring necessary. She uses the 2 square method. I don't know why I wanted to call it 2 triangle. Apparently I needed more caffeine last night. The 2 triangle or 2 square method for making the Flying Geese. You could use any method you wanted, but the instructions that come with the ruler are based on that method. There are 4 sizes, 4 different rulers, and there are 2 sizes that overlap between 2 of the rulers. But once you have your unit finished, so let me do one thing here. One second. No. So what you would do is once you've got to, hold on, here's the one I want. This point on this method, you would take your ruler, you would align the geese, the shape of your Flying Geese unit. So you would take and you would align this center triangle on the ruler up with this, and then basically cut around the ruler. Okay? So using those rulers to trim out the actual shape here is much easier than trying to do it with a traditional ruler, and it's just a little bit more accurate in that aspect. And so those are the Quilt and a Day rulers. Again, not nearly as many sizes that are available. Oh, where did you find them?
She just found them in the classroom. I looked in the kitchen area. She found them right by the board.
Where your wall board is.
Where your wall board.
Design board.
That
laying
wall
there now?
thing where we just go right around it. It was on the other
No.
side.
On those
Oh, I did. I got fabric to cut the cutting samples.
Well, there they are.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Yes. So now I can show you.
You know where they were?
They were in the classroom where I stopped to get fabric to cut samples
I did
out.
not. I went over there, but why did I stop?
All right, so
That's called Alzheimer's.
it's called Alzheimer's.
Oh,
Yes.
yay, just a nick of time.
At least we found it right when I needed it. So yes, so a 3x6. So here we are. To keep these rulers from slipping, I would use either Invisigrip or a product called Grippy. Will somebody bring me a can of Grippy?
No.
So what you can do is, I'll get some Grippy and show you. Will you get me a can of Grippy? So you take your Flying Geese. So this is the 3x6. We lay that in, that it lines up with the center of the ruler. So I would take that green triangle, align it there in the center. That gives me the right seam allowances. A rotating mat is very helpful with Flying Geese rulers. Okay. There we go. Perfect 3x6 rectangle. It's not, but I will show you what I did with it.
Okay.
Grippy. So Grippy is a non-slip coating spray that you can apply to the backs of your rulers. Okay. You just apply a thin layer. It's translucent. And and it will be non-skid. You can apply it. It comes off easily. If you want to wash your ruler, you can take it off. You can reapply to make it more grippy, but this is between this or Invisigrip. I'm not a huge fan of using sandpaper dots and things like that. They make it difficult for you to be able to nudge a ruler if there's any sort of pressure on those sandpaper dots, and it will wrinkle your fabric. And then they also don't allow you to see through those sandpaper dots. So you have to be very careful where you put those sandpaper dots, that they don't impede a line of reference that you need for that. So that's what I use. Okay. So those are the quilt in a day, and like I said, these were many moons old that I have. They're still out there, still very popular. The ones that Eleanor uses in her patterns and things. They were the first when I first started 20 years ago. The next ruler that I ever purchased after that is going to be a wing clipper. Okay, the wing clipper. There are two sizes of a wing clipper that are out there in the world. Those are going to give you the different sizes. So wing clipper 1, Deb Tucker uses the no waste method, okay, for her half square triangles. The wing clipper 1 is going to give you 10 sizes from a 1/2 inch by 1 inch finished flying geese to a 5 by 10 inch finished flying geese. And every size 1/2 inch up from there. And then wing clipper 2 are going to give you what I call the odd size flying geeses. Okay. So that's going to give you from the 3 1/4 by 1 1/2 all the way to the 9 3/4 by 9 1/2. So a lot of my miniature Joe Morton fans, things like that use really small things, the wing clipper 2 is a good option because you get that 3/4 and then you get 1/4 inch increments so that you can with your wing clipper size, so that you can see here. So the wing clipper, okay, gives you all the necessary lines and marks. This mark here would be the intersection of where your goose body would go. Okay. And Deb also gives you instructions for both left and right-handers in the pattern. So for my left-handers, that's very nice to have. Okay. So that you can see as a right-hander, we first align the bottom, the flying geese unit, what I would call upside down. Okay, you align your triangle or your marked lines, and then you can trim your two edges, and then you flip your trimmed edge over, and then you align the marked little X right at the point of where your so that little X would go right at your intersection of your triangle, and then you can trim. And I know Miss Tina, who is here and teaches here, she's a Studio 180 certified instructor. She could show this much better than I can, but it is a good ruler to have. She also, Deb also will give you in the pattern the chart, okay, for what sizes need to be cut. And if you ever lose your instructions or lose your chart, they are available to download from the website. Okay. So that's a wing clipper. Another really great one. I moved to using the wing clipper. I don't use my quilt in a day nearly as much as I grab my wing clipper, just because there are more size options for this one. Okay. All right. Next would be if you're more into making the traditional flying geese, and I just realized I left a ruler off, but that's okay. If you're more into making the traditional flying geese with the 3 triangles, basically, the Marty Michelle is the ruler that I like to use to cut those shapes, okay? So the rulers that you're looking at cut both the goose unit as well as the sky unit. So on these rulers, oops, come back. This way is the goose, and then when you rotate the ruler 90 degrees, this half of the ruler is used for the sky unit. We use these units get cut from strips. So you cut your strip width according to the ruler, and then you lay this ruler on top and then cut around the ruler. Basically cut up one side and down the other. The markings or the ruler is notched so that you have the engineered corners to trim off dog ears. So just like with AccuQuilt, you can trim your edges so that you know exactly where things need to line up. Okay, so if I was wanted to make a 3x6 flying geese, I would cut a strip 3.5 inches wide. I would lay that down, align this line on the 3.5 inch line of the fabric, and then I could cut up. I could flip this and cut this way, and then flip it and cut this way, all the way across. And then if I wanted to cut the sky portion, I just rotate the ruler, and now I'm using just this edge to cut on. Okay. There's 2 sizes of that ruler depending upon your size requirement and method. The one here on the left is the one I use most often. It is got the most common sizes for me, a 4x8, things like that. Flying Geese unit. Creative Grids has the ultimate flying geese ruler that actually would allow you to use either the no waste method or the traditional triangle method. So this ruler actually cuts both ways. Okay, so you do have the option for that. Cuts 8 different size flying geese. Okay, that's there. And or you can also just use it to trim up your flying geese like the wing clipper in that aspect as the lower portion. The lower portion here you can use for squaring up your units. Okay. There's also the older, this one is an older unit, an older ruler. The Creative Grid's 45 and 90. It actually cuts 45 degree square triangles and 90 degree triangles, which is the 90 degree triangle is your goose, the 45 is the sky. This will allow you to make a flying geese up to 6x12. Okay, so this would give you the option for cutting things out with the triangle method and then using it. Okay. So it's just a bigger version of that. So it just depends upon the method that you want to make your flying geese unit with. There's also, I forgot to put in there, the block lock rulers. The block lock ruler has, they use the no waste method as well so the block lock also uses no waste, and what the block lock has, it's got an indentation in the ruler that, indentation, a shelf or a lip more than anything, that you would push up into the goose body and then trim around. So versus you lining up a line, there's an actual lip that's on the ruler that fits right into and kind of locks it in place so you don't have to deal with slipping or movement. The thing with the block lock ruler is it's one ruler per size. And so you don't have if you want to make a bunch of different size different size flying geese, you're going to need a bunch of different size block lock rulers. But if you have one particular size you always make, then a block lock is perfect. But if you want variety in the number of if you want variety in the number of rulers or the number of flying geese that you can do, then I would definitely look at a wing clipper or using the traditional method. If I were to pick one, a wing clipper is the one that I use. And mostly because the wing clipper, it's definitely, you have, I don't want to say room for error per se, but the wing clipper, they're a little oversized. In her math, her charts are a little bit bigger than what you really need. So there's a little bit margin of error or room for you to get things to be the exact size. The least problem with bias, if you're going to pick a method, I would go with the no waste method and work with this one. Okay, which we start with the big square and go that way. Stitch and flip is good, but you've got to make sure that you stay to the outside of that line. It's very easy with the stitch and flip method to get your flying geeses to be too small. And so if you're concerned or you are struggling with your flying geese not ending at the right size, make them bigger and then trim them down using a wing clipper or something along that lines to the correct side. Yeah, stitch and flip, like I said, with stitch and flipping, if you don't sew, one second. If you sew right on that line, or just a little bit, let's see, to down here. I hate mirror image cameras. Okay. So if you sew right on that line or sew even to the inside here, it's gonna be too small. You've not left yourself room for fabric to fold over the thread. And that's why I say when you sew to the outside of that line, okay, away from the center of your goose. That way you're leaving room for fabric to fold over itself. You're leaving room for your thread that's inside of that seam, and then you're going to have a better chance of getting this to line up straight across the top of that flying geese. It really is a no room for error in a stitch and flip. So I'm definitely use more of the no waste method than I do with the other methods. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, I was a question about, and I will come back about my awl. I'll come back to that in 1 second. In the PowerPoint or the presentation that you can download, there are these links, okay, that you can click. The presentation is already uploaded to the Material Girls Quilt Boutique website, materialgirlsquilt.com, under the YouTube channel. It's there. One of the big ones in there are these cutting charts, okay? Those cutting charts, basically, there's a cutting chart for traditional, there's one for stitch and flip, and then there's one for no waste method that came from a website, Pretty Piney, that she's already figured out your charts for you. And so all you need to know is in the no waste method, you just need to go and find the size your pattern is calling for in your flying geese unit, and then she tells you exactly what you need to cut to create this particular method. Now, the thing to remember with altering the method from the way that the pattern designer has planned it may also mess with the amount of yardage that you need. Okay? So, if you are looking at a pattern or contemplating a pattern, take a look at how they make their flying geese in that pattern. And if they're doing traditional triangle methods or they are opting to do stitch and flip, you may want to just go up a little bit more in your yardage so that you can cut larger squares to be able to I just literally that word I just completely lost my train of thought mid-word. But yes, we'll just stop there. The tool that was laying, thank you, trim down. The tool that was laying on the table that I used, this is an Annie's stiletto, okay? The front end of it is a stiletto, and the back end of it is a basically a wooden finger that you can use to press. Yeah, okay. So yes, that's what was laying on the table that I used to press the back of that seam. Yeah, I apologize for not being on the ball today. I do not know what my problem is. I've already had a big soda. I really don't. I've already had enough caffeine. Oh, goodness. So, anyway, this is flying geese. I know it is a extremely frustrating thing to make for many people. It can be challenging, especially if, and I'm telling you right now, if the pattern is using stitch and flip and you are not getting them to be the right size, you are sewing too far into the center of that drawn line. You need to notch it out just a little bit, okay, so that you can locate it from there. Okay, now I will move this over to YouTube. Okay, you also can find the presentation, like I said, up on materialgirlsquilt.com, and then go to the YouTube tab at the top, and then move down into today's date. All the presentations and video links for all the breakfast clubs from 2020 and 2021 are there, as well as the links for the 2 Bernina presentations that I did are up there as well. Well, I'm going to go and try to get myself together before I teach here at 10 o'clock and see if I can get my thoughts. But yes, so flying geese, keep practicing with them, keep trying them. I don't, at the moment, in terms of what we have in stock, I don't have any. See how prepared I am? No, I can get wing clippers are on order. Yes, the wooden finger and a wooden iron are the same. Yep, same thing. It just saves you a trip to the iron. But yes, so, all right. We will be getting some, if there's a particular ruler that you want or anything, please just let me know. I will special order anything for you without a problem. We have limited space in the store, and I want to make sure that I keep you with all the fun stuff. So I try to keep what I like, but that doesn't mean it has to be what you like. Yeah, I do have a 1.5 by 3 inch block lock flying geese ruler. It's in the sale area. I think it's 30% off because it's a tiny ruler, a tiny flying geese. And I don't have many of you that don't like making big ones, let alone making a miniature one. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope you found this informational. I, again, apologizing for not being able to finish my sentences, for not being able to find my rulers this morning, but we located them. So thank you. Have a great day, and I will see you all soon.